I'm Esther Dillard on the Black Information Network, chatting with writers and authors who offer an added perspective for our listeners. This is The Color Between the Lines. On this edition of The Color Between the Lines, we're talking about a documentary film that hits upon a subject that a lot of the country is really grappling with, and that is homelessness. And homelessness these days can be seen very differently in different ways. Documentary producers Mario Tharpe and Brian Rogers are the producers of this year's installment of the Firsthand Homeless documentary series that's airing on Chicago's PBS station, WTTW. Mario Tharpe joins us today as one of the five subjects of the documentary film, whose name is Brian Rogers. Thank you, Brian Rogers and Mario Tharpe, for joining us on the BIN.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Having us.
Well, may I first call you by your first names during this interview, because I don't want to disrespect anybody.
Absolutely. It's fine with me. Denzel Washington is great.
Mario, I looked at the series and it is really extensive. You put a lot of work into this. It's part of a larger project, and I wanted you to kind of talk a little bit about that. That's been going on for quite some time. And I wanted you to talk about also, as a Black filmmaker, did you find it difficult getting a green light from this project? I guess talk about that process and getting that moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the sixth season that WTTW out of Chicago has put together this wonderful series, documentary series, and it is called Firsthand. Now, each season there's a different topic that we highlight. This is actually my second season on the project. But, you know, we've covered over the years, like last year was Firsthand Life After Prison. Of course, this year is Firsthand Homeless. We've looked at coronavirus, gun violence. We've also done segregation. So I think I'm missing one, but there have been, and poverty is the other one. So again, this is the sixth season. And, you know, the goal is to find, well, the last few seasons is to find 5 individuals that we can follow and tell exactly what the topic says firsthand. So we want to get their firsthand perspective, firsthand account of what it's like, in this case, to be homeless. You know, a lot of people think they know, but we really don't. Being homeless or being unhoused is not living in an encampment. Part of it is, or living in a tent. As Brian can tell you about his story later, his is nothing like that. And that was the goal for us, was to find 5 very different and distinct pieces of or stories that can give us a look into the life of being homeless on various levels. Your other question was about, you know, being a Black filmmaker. So WTTW approached me because I had worked on a number of documentaries for them before. And so last season, again, which was my first season, we talked so no, it wasn't difficult at all. I have a relationship, a rapport with a number of folks over there. And, you know, it was a perfect fit last season because we focused on life after prison. And my experience of growing up on the west side of Chicago, I saw a lot and knew a lot of guys that went off to prison and were still there, or some that had been released. So that was a perfect fit for me as a storyteller. And this one was just as powerful, and got an opportunity to meet some amazing people like Brian. So I have to give credit to WTTW because they approached me and asked me to come and join the team last season.
Awesome. Well, Brian, I definitely want to get your take in this whole documentary. The crew followed you on your kind of like on a daily, day in, day out, and you share how, you know, for you, life really was a good one when you were growing up. You had a pretty stable family with grandma and mom, and you had a lot of things that were afforded to you, but somehow you got in trouble with the law. And I wondered if you could just kind of explain to the audience why you got involved with this documentary project.
Well, I was initially approached. Mario reached out to one of my organizers at Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. And from there, it was explained to me what was expected and what the documentary was trying to capture, and asked me did I want to be a part of that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, because I've experienced it, and just by eye look, when you look around our city in various places, just the sheer capacity and a number of people that are homeless. So obviously that's a problem. Obviously, I wanted to be involved with that, and I wanted to let people know that everybody's story to homelessness is not the perceived bias as it was, say, 20 or 30 years ago. Especially when a lot of our homeless population stayed, maybe Lower Wacker Drive or in certain places where somebody's bias could pinpoint. So my story is unique. I just want to let people know that anything could happen. Anything could happen along the way, and you'll find yourself in this position. So, it's not that like you're looking to be homeless, but out of what took place with myself, as far as going in and out of the prison industrial complex, and then losing loved ones who provided a home for me, um, returning back into society after incarceration, they weren't there. So neither was my place to stay. My place to stay uh, sort of disappeared, so to speak. Um, so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved.
Well, Mario, I'm gonna go back to you. I love the fact that with this documentary, you don't just focus on Black and brown folks. It's not the stereotypical, just like Mr. Rogers was talking about. It's just but did you find that because you're probably running into so many different types of people that were dealing with homelessness, from surf couching to, domestic violence to all types of things, was it difficult whittling it down to just five?
Um, yeah, it was, and obviously, homelessness or being unhoused doesn't have a color. It doesn't have gender. I mean, there's so many things that it doesn't have. Locating the five stories, unfortunately, I wish it was hard, right? But because there's so many people out here who are dealing with this issue, it more became a problem, not a problem, but it became for me, it was more finding the right story, not a story, because there are a ton of people who are dealing with homelessness and being unhoused. And I wish I could say that it was hard, but it really wasn't. We were fortunate enough to work with the night ministry, and two of our subjects came from the night ministry. They were one of the first organizations that we reached out to. And of course, they knew, hundreds and hundreds of people that could possibly work for us. We were able to settle on two who had very powerful stories. Yolanda, and I'm not sure if you saw any of the stories, but she was in the encampment, and who recently got an apartment.
Oh, good.
I personally went and paid a visit to her last night at her new apartment.
Good.
So, she's no longer on the street. She had been there for many years, living in a tent underneath a bridge.
Yeah.
And Dan also was street homeless, lived wherever he could, from alleys to parking structures to doorways, wherever he can safely find a place to sleep is where he laid his head at night. So those two came from the night ministry, and then we were fortunate enough to get Brian, who was affiliated and still is with the St. Leonard's Ministries, and then who also is connected with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. But then we also got Jackie, who was affiliated with A Safe Haven, another homeless organization here in Chicago that deals with, transitional temporary housing. And then Kimberly, a young mother of a 2-year-old who was really affiliated with Thresholds, another temporary transitional housing facility. So, it took time to kind of find the right fit or the right people, but I think we did a great job with finding 5 people who all had amazing stories, again, showing different parts of being homeless in Chicago.
I have to do a follow-up with you, Mario, on how when, as a reporter for years, I did with TV, when you interview people that are dealing with struggling with a situation, a lot of times people think that when you go home, you turn off the camera and it doesn't follow you home. Did it affect you personally when you were telling
Yeah.
these?
And so let me tell you, I've been in this business a very long time. I don't want to date myself or age myself, but I've been in this business a long time, and I've worked on a number of documentaries, TV shows, you name it. I feel like I've done it. This has been the hardest project for me because, you know, I was at the end of the day, I was able to go home and eat dinner at a table, take a shower, turn on a television. I can almost, I can hop in my pretty nice car and move around. And when I showed up on location, those 9 or 10 days that we filmed Dan's story, but again, I was involved with everybody's story. So I spent time with Brian, I spent time with Yolanda, with everyone. So my obligation went beyond the 9 days of filming, but it was extremely hard. I mean, to the point, as I said, I went and paid a visit to Yolanda yesterday. I stay in contact with all of them, Brian and everyone else. I have not been able to um, turn this off because I have built a rapport with these folks. And in some cases, they talk to me just because of, things that are happening in their life, but they have also we've built a bond. When Yolanda was on the street here in Chicago, it was extremely cold for probably 10 days, brutal. And I just kept thinking about her because she was the only one that was still out on the street. Dan had found an apartment, but she was in a tent and it was 0 below. It was brutal. I went out in the cold, made sure she had something to eat, some hot coffee, some bottled water, um, whatever I can do because I knew her and her fiance were stuck in this tent. So yeah, it's hard to just turn it off and say, oh, I'm done with the project. They've given me what I want. That's not how it should work. And anybody who has a heart has to be able to follow through and assist however they can. If it's just saying, hey, here's an extra blanket or here's some coffee. I couldn't live with myself if I wasn't able, if I didn't go and check on all of them, including Brian. I reach out to him, say, hey man, how's it going?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's all it takes.
Brian, I wanted you to talk a little bit more about that Bring Chicago Home initiative. I know that that was part of some of the documentaries, and I I see that there is an initiative to kind of get people to push this for city council members and the mayor to put it on the ballot. What exactly do you believe that this initiative would mean for people who are struggling with homelessness?
Well, first of all, it'll get people in housing, period, point blank. Second of all, it'll get people access to the services that they need to maintain their housing. I'd rather teach someone how to fish so they can eat versus giving them a fish for one day, you know. And that is our objective and our mindset behind Bring Chicago Home. We know that it takes money. It takes money to do everything. So to come up with a dedicated revenue stream, how ingenious some of our strategists were in coming up with that after looking at several models across the country, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and then sitting down with our grassroots leaders and coming up with, hey, what do you guys want? It wasn't just decided without us, because it takes people with the lived experience to convey the problem, things that they would like to see happen as a solution, and tell their stories about why it is so important from each one of their perspectives.
And let me say, and I think it's very important that your listeners understand that they can watch these 5 stories by going to WTTW.com/firsthand. It is live now. I went live on February 19th. We had a big launch event at the TV station, WTTW. And there's a combination. This is a year-long initiative. So it's not just the 5 stories. There are what we call the talks, which is, basically like TED Talks. And we have 5 experts who, 4 or 5, yeah, 5 experts who spoke about different topics within the subject of homelessness.
Well, Mario, you have the last word in telling people, what do you hope that people will get once they watch this series?
Yeah, I mean, just, have an open mind and understand that everybody's story is different. Just because, the person may have made one mistake or even no mistakes. It doesn't take much for any of us could be homeless. I mean, a lot of us are just like 1 or 2 paychecks away. And I really want people to watch these 5 stories because, again, if they think they know what homelessness is, they don't. And these
Wow.
stories these powerful stories will really make you think differently.
They're very powerful. I enjoyed them. And I want to say again, the series is Firsthand Homeless, airing on WTTW in Chicago. You can catch them online right now. All you have to do is go online and look them up. Hit a Google search. Thank you, Brian Rogers, for sharing your story with us on the BIN. And thank you, producer Mario Tharpe, for joining us on the BIN. I appreciate you both.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having us both.
I'm Esther Dillard on the Black Information Network.